Hey guys, injury lawyer Scott DeSalvo here, and in today's video, I wanted to talk to you about medical malpractice. Specifically, what are the two things that every lawyer needs to know to evaluate whether you have a good medical malpractice case? Now, obviously, there's like hundreds of other things and hundreds of other details that a lawyer needs to know and consider when ultimately deciding to file a lawsuit on a medical malpractice case, but I'm talking about the things that a lawyer needs to know when they initially evaluate your medical malpractice case. So what are the two most important things, and when should you call a medical malpractice lawyer? So let's get right into it. A guy gave me a call about a medical malpractice case. He was getting an IV transfusion at a hospital, and they had it in his arm, and he got an infection in his arm. And then he also, they actually put they removed it from his arm due to the infection, and they placed it in his shoulder, believe it or not. So there's lots of places they can put an IV, and sometimes they want a big healthy vein in an area of the body that has a robust blood supply. So when you get down to your fingers and toes, there's very little blood supply. The closer to the middle of your body that you get, the more blood supply there is, so it's less likely for you to get an infection. So that's what happened, and then he got an infection in the shoulder too. So he called me up, and I immediately thought these two things, which is the reason why I thought to shoot this video for you. So the first thing is, and this is like kind of a logical one, is what did the doctors do wrong? Okay, so what happened and what did the doctors do wrong? Now, in this guy's case, just the fact that you get an infection at the hospital isn't that surprising. In fact, infections, hospital-borne infections, or they call them superbugs because they're resistant to all of the basic antibiotics. So superbugs, infections in the hospital, even if the doctor doesn't do anything wrong, are actually quite common, okay? Now, the flip side is, usually with an infection case, we see this a lot with bed sore cases. Once a bed sore or an infection develops, they are negligent if they don't treat it or to address it, right? So if there's an infection, if they don't immediately, in this guy's case, change the site where the needle goes in and immediately start you on antibiotics and have an infectious disease doctor come in, or it's not charted in the charts. If somebody has an infection like that and gets no treatment for a month, we all know what happens with infections that go untreated. They just get worse and worse, and they can eventually kill you, right? So that's the first thing, but the problem is, of course, the client and his wife couldn't really tell me exactly what the doctor did wrong, and that is true in almost all medical malpractice cases, right? That's why getting the medical records in a medical malpractice case before giving a client a final answer on whether a case is one that you can file a lawsuit on or not is very, very, very important, right? We have to do that in every medical malpractice case. So that's the first thing. What happened exactly? What did the doctor do wrong? You can just tell the lawyer you consult with everything you know. They will definitely ask you follow-up questions that will give them more info. But in virtually every medical malpractice case, before a lawyer can give you an answer on whether it's going to be a medical malpractice case and whether they can take it and whether they think they'll win, they're going to need to look at the medical records. There's a few that don't, right? So if a doctor cuts off the wrong leg, that's kind of a slam dunk. But I would say 99.9% of the medical malpractice cases where I talk to people, that first one is a major issue. Now, the second one is a little bit different than typical injury cases, right? So the gentleman we're talking about called me, him and his wife called me right at the beginning where they were doing wound care on his arm and on his shoulder, okay? So they had just started him on an aggressive course of IV antibiotics. They didn't know, like literally had just started him on that stuff, right? So the question is, what's his outcome going to be? Like, how good is he going to heal, right? Well, why is that important? You may have consulted with me, and you may say, Scott, I had a car crash case and my neck really, really hurt, and I thought I was going to have a permanent problem for sure, but then my neck got better and you still took my case and you still got me an awesome settlement really quick. Well, that's true in a car crash case, and this is why we're talking about the difference in a medical malpractice case. How big the injury is determines how big the eventual settlement or verdict might be. Right? Now, why is that important? Well, it's important because in medical malpractice cases, you can't just come into my office and say, Dr. So-and-so screwed up, file a lawsuit. No, instead, I have to obtain all of your medical records. I have to organize them. I have to review them to see if there's anything missing. There often are medical records missing. For example, you'll get hospital records and an anesthesia. There'll be no anesthesia record in there. Things like that. So I have to make sure they're complete. I have to prepare a summary, and then I have to find a doctor of the correct specialty to review the case and write a report for us saying that this isn't just a random happenstance, a bad outcome. It's actually an identifiable thing that a doctor or nurse or hospital did that caused your problem, right? So, as you can imagine, doctors don't like to testify against other doctors. So finding a doctor who will even review a case for medical malpractice is rare. It's hard to find a doc who will do that for you, and the ones who will do it for you are very, very, very expensive, right? They're usually like tops in their field, so an hour of their time is very expensive. And compounding the problem, if your case involves a mistake by a nurse, a mistake by hospital administrators, and let's say a mistake by an orthopedic doctor and a mistake by a neurologist, in theory, I have 4 different specialists I have to talk to and pay. It is not uncommon in a medical malpractice case to spend anywhere from $20,000, $25,000 all the way up to more than $100,000. And that is before we even file the lawsuit. And virtually all of that money is spent on these medical experts. And we're not allowed to file a lawsuit without consulting medical experts. So due to the extreme amount of work and expense in medical malpractice cases, that's the second thing that any lawyer is going to ask you right away. They're going to ask you, what is the story with your outcome? How serious are your injuries? And obviously, in order to support the time and expense that it takes to do one of these cases, we're talking about we need a serious permanent injury or death or paralysis or, really, really horrible serious consequences. And that's what most lawyers look for. So, if you have a medical malpractice situation, I'm happy to talk to you. You can reach me at 312-500-4500. Any lawyer you talk to is, of course, going to want to know what happened, and what you tell them might not be enough. They might need to get the medical records. In fact, they almost always will have to. And they're also going to ask you right away, what injuries and what outcome did you get from the doctor's mistake? And if the injury or problem that you have isn't, a profound, life-changing problem, the lawyer probably might be afraid to just be frank with you the way I'm being frank with you. They might be afraid to say the case isn't big enough because they don't want to upset you. But that's really what's happening. The case has to be big enough to bear the time and expense of handling a medical malpractice case. So if you have any questions about your case or your situation, different lawyers definitely have different opinions on cases. And I've picked up cases that other lawyers have said, not big enough, or I just don't see it. And I've been successful with it in any variety of kinds of cases: car crash, fall down, med mal, nursing home abuse, whatever it is. So if you have any questions, give me a call, 312-500-4500. Thanks for watching the video. I hope this information helped you, and have a great day.